We all hear it. Corporate greed, it's everywhere. But is it really impacting the housing market? The short answer is yes. Corporate greed is playing a significant role in distorting and worsening the housing market. Let's see how and why corporate influence is contributing to housing affordability issues, especially here in the US. First of all, institutional investors are buying up single-family homes. It's that simple. Large investment firms are purchasing entire neighborhoods or large portfolios of homes, especially in the Sunbelt states and other high-growth suburbs in our country. This causes problems for several reasons. They outbid regular buyers with all-cash offers, making it hard for the average home buyer to compete. Basically, first-time home buyers are completely locked out of the housing market. And when these large corporations buy up large areas of housing, they inflate home prices by creating artificial scarcity, which in turn raises prices beyond what local incomes can support. And their end goal is to rent, not sell, meaning fewer homes remain in the ownership market. So this really starts to make the American dream of home ownership more like forever renting than owning. Second, corporate landlords prioritize profits over people. Corporate landlords now own tens of thousands of rental homes across our country. Their strategy often involves buying distressed or affordable homes, renovating just enough to rebrand them as premium rentals, and then raising rent aggressively and adding on all these crazy fees like a convenience fee or a pet rent fee and things like that. The problem is that in many of these areas, rent increases outpace wage growth, so it just becomes less and less affordable even to rent. Tenants often face less flexibility, poor maintenance, and higher eviction risks. And believe me, these companies are not known for great customer service. Tenants typically see customer service decline and hard to reach landlords in general. Specifically in Connecticut and cities like Hartford and Bridgeport, reports have surfaced of outside investors buying up multifamily units, hiking rents, and neglecting repairs. And corporate ownership of housing stock in these areas contributes to gentrification, pushing out long-term residents. Another problem is that these corporations treat houses as commodities, not homes. Real estate has become a financial instrument, a vehicle for hedge funds and REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, as well as foreign investors looking to store and grow wealth. It really becomes a problem because investors aren't buying homes to live in or improve communities. Properties oftentimes sit empty, known as ghost homes, or they're used as short-term rentals. It is purely a money play, and they work the system to benefit them and not help the community looking to buy or rent a home. I know in some Connecticut shoreline towns, vacation home investors have priced out locals, leading to seasonal vacancy and economic imbalance. I definitely see it locally here. Many neighborhoods are getting fed up with the constant in and out of renters, lack of parking, and inflation on home prices. Another issue is that corporate lobbying skews housing policy. Large property developers and landlord groups spend millions and millions of dollars on lobbying to heavily influence zoning laws, oppose tenant protections, and block affordable housing mandates. Policies tend to favor luxury development over affordable units. Rent control, tenant rights, and low-income housing are frequently blocked. In Connecticut, affordable housing proposals in wealthy suburbs are often met with strong resistance. Sometimes they're influenced by developer interests, but sometimes it's the community in general. It's called the Not in My Backyard movement, which I've talked about in the past. It basically means that the locals band together to block projects that they see as being undesirable for their neighborhood. Corporations also drive speculation, and investors treat homes like stocks. They buy low, sell high, and chase appreciation rather than community stability. Rapid buying seen by corporations really increases bidding wars and inflates appraisals. People pay more than a house is worth, betting on future price increases. It really creates a housing bubble and a potential collapse, like we saw in 2008. So, is corporate greed ruining the housing market? Yes, but not in isolation. It is a major driver of soaring prices, worsening inequity, and decreased home ownership in many parts of our country. But there are other forces that also contribute. Things like local zoning laws that block multifamily housing, which I've discussed in previous videos. Interest rate fluctuations, which we've all seen in the last 5 years. Lack of new construction and inadequate public housing investment. All of these things have shaped the housing market that we see today. But now that we know this, what can be done? There needs to be stronger regulations on institutional investors in housing in general. We need to create and enforce rent control and tenant protection laws. We also need zoning reform to allow more multifamily and affordable units. We need to create incentives for individual buyers like down payment assistance to help them attain the home ownership dream. And perhaps another idea is to have tax penalties on vacant homes and speculative purchases. Here in Connecticut, though we aren't quite known for the large corporations buying up vast neighborhoods, we do have many smaller investors that are impacting our state's housing market. But we are trying to actively address the challenges posed by corporate influence in our housing market through various legislative and policy initiatives. So what are some of these actions we're taking? One thing is known as the just cause eviction legislation. Connecticut lawmakers have been considering a just cause eviction bill aimed at preventing landlords from evicting tenants without a valid reason once leases expire. However, the bill faces uncertainty due to concerns about its impact on both landlords and housing investment. Landlords argue that it really could hinder the removal of a problematic tenant, while tenant advocates contend it protects against unjust evictions. Other tenant protection measures, such as limiting security deposits and controlling rent hikes, are also kind of in limbo right now. Another option out there is zoning reform and affordable housing initiatives. The state is exploring zoning reforms to encourage the development of affordable housing. A proposal called Towns Take the Lead would encourage towns to plan for affordable housing in exchange for prioritization in state funding. Another idea is reevaluation of the 8-30G housing law. So what is that? This law basically mandates that 10% of a municipality's housing stock has to be affordable. While the law was designed to address the state's affordable housing crisis, some argue that its rigid, one-size-fits-all approach has produced unintended negative outcomes. Some of these negative outcomes have been the undermining of local zoning authority, environmental degradation, and strained infrastructure. So again, though Connecticut isn't quite in the same boat as some of the Sunbelt states with corporations buying up swaths of land and neighborhoods, we definitely suffer from our own housing issues with smaller investors. Connecticut is actively engaging in legislative and policy efforts to mitigate the impact of corporate influence on our housing market here. And while challenges remain, the state's initiatives reflect a commitment to balancing development with tenant protections and community interests. If you're thinking about moving to Connecticut, please reach out. I'd love to help. And until next time, have a great day.